Millions of people in New England are under flood watches this morning as torrential rains pounded the region, causing major flooding in Vermont, forecasters said. Videos showed streets transformed into rivers in Vermont in what authorities warned was life-threatening flooding that Governor Phil Scott compared to Tropical Storm Irene. Torrential rains across parts of New England will be slow to subside and dissipate as significant flooding remains possible, the National Weather Service said. Flood watches are expected to remain in effect for much of the region throughout the day. What to know about the severe weather? Vermont's governor said last night that some parts of the state had seen flooding worse than in 2011 during Tropical Storm Irene, a historic storm that destroyed bridges, homes, and roads. Downtown Montpelier was flooded overnight, prompting officials to close the section of Vermont's capital until noon today. A woman in her 40s was swept away by rapid waters in Orange County, 60 miles north of New York City, as she sought higher ground with her dog. All Vermont state offices are closed Tuesday in the wake of intense rainfall, flooding, and road washouts across the region. Employees whose duties allow for remote work are expected to continue to telework, the Vermont Agency of Administration said in a release. State employees designated as essential personnel for reduced workforce situations, such as corrections, public safety, and congregate care facilities, are exempt from the closure and should report to work as normally required, according to the release. State offices will reopen for first shift on Wednesday. Orange County Executive Stephen Newhouse described Sunday's torrents of rain and flash flooding that hit New York's Hudson Valley as a complete nightmare for us. If you responded as a first responder, the roads literally deteriorated after you came in, and we were pretty much trapped there. Now Orange County is in repair and assessment stage, focusing on fixing up roads and assessing the bridges as the floodwaters are receding. He said an emergency shelter has been set up as many people in that entire region had significant damage to their homes and businesses. The Hudson Valley had some respite yesterday as heavy storms hit Vermont. In an aerial view, water covers residential property on Route 11 after heavy rain yesterday in Londonderry, Vermont. More than 8,000 utility customers were without power in Vermont early this morning, according to an online tracker. At least 8,300 utility customers were impacted by outages as of around 6:30 a.m. ET. According to the online tracker, a man walks through floodwaters carrying his belongings out of a home in Bridgewater, Vermont yesterday. NY had more than 8 inches of rain, but worst considered over. Governor says more than 24 sections of highways and state routes in New York State were closed due to heavy rain last night, the governor said, after more than 8 inches of rain fell over 2 days. While much of the storm has passed through New York, it's critical to remain vigilant, Governor Kathy Hochul said in a statement last night. Vermont's governor said last night that some parts of the state had seen flooding worse than in 2011 during Tropical Storm Irene, a historic storm that destroyed bridges, homes, and roads. Flooding in parts of Vermont have surpassed what was experienced during Tropical Storm Irene, and rivers are expected to continue rising through the night. Stay away from waterways, Governor Phil Scott tweeted. Irene began as a hurricane that struck the Caribbean before making landfall in North Carolina in August 2011. By the time it reached Vermont, it was a tropical storm. Irene caused catastrophic inland flooding in Vermont, as well as in New Jersey and Massachusetts, researchers at the National Hurricane Center wrote in a subsequent report. More than 40 people died in Puerto Rico and the continental United States. A state report said 6 people died in Vermont. The Weather Service said Irene ranked as the second worst natural disaster in Vermont's history. A woman in Orange County, New York, died as she sought higher ground during flooding Sunday, officials said. Bridge inspection teams were also dispatched to look at structures in the wake of the flooding, among other assistance, the governor's office said. The city of Montpelier is urging business owners to have patience, but the downtown section of the city is closed until noon today after flooding. The swollen Winooski River and rainfall flooded the area. Water is expected to recede as the river crests at major flood stage. We know that business owners will be anxious to check out their stores, but we urge patience, the city said in a statement. Damage is unlikely to get worse between 8 a.m. and noon as water levels drop. Officials want to inspect safety issues as water recedes in the city of around 8,000. The Winooski could crest before it starts to recede, according to the Weather Service forecast. Millions of people in New England are waking up under flood watches this morning as torrential rains pound the region, causing major flooding in Vermont, forecasters said. Torrential rains across parts of New England will be slow to subside and dissipate as significant flooding remains possible across the region, forecasters said. Flood watches will remain in effect for much of the region through today, the Weather Service said.